Grace and peace. Welcome back to the Halftime Podcast. My name is Shai Linne, and today we're going to talk about friendships, and specifically friendships between men, male friendships. Recently, I heard somebody say something really interesting. He said, men over 40 do not have friends. Mm-hmm. And at first glance, you think about that and you're like, well, wait, hold up. Like what you mean by that? Men over 40 don't have friends? And before I was in my 40s, I would have been like, you tripping. That don't even make no sense. But now that I'm here, I get it. Like, I get what he was talking about. The idea is that unless you have your day ones, so either people you grew up with or people you went to school with or people who, you connected with in your 20s and they're still around, it's very difficult to establish brand new friendships once you reach a certain age. Because just think about it. It's like, wait, okay, let's just say I meet a dude, my son. My son plays basketball. He's on the basketball team. And so I go to practice with him and I meet another dad. Because the older you get, the more you start to your social networks start to go through your kids. So it's like, okay, I meet another dad at practice and let's say we vibing over the game. But then it's like, okay, where are we going to go with this friendship? Am I going to have to start all over? Where do I even begin to inform him and let him know where I am? It just seems like starting over at this age, it just feels like too much. And so what you do is you stick with those who you came up with, but in this age in particular, you see more and more broken relationships. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of dudes that, when I start thinking about, okay, who am I still connected with that I was connected with in high school, let's just say? I nobody. College, I got a couple dudes that I'm still connected with from college. You start to think, okay, what about my 20s? What about my 30s? And what I've seen in my experience is a lot of either broken relationships, particularly in this political environment, which is one whole thing, or just life. Life just moves people in different directions. And then with social media, you kind of feel comfortable with having people at a distance. So, as long as you're able to check up and read one of their posts, it's almost like you're still in contact with that person, even if you haven't talked to that person in years, right? So for me, I've just been thinking a lot about friendships with other dudes. What really sparked this for me was a little while back, I saw an interview with Mos Def and Talib Kweli, or Yasin Bey and Talib Kweli. And they were talking about one of the things that Yasin mentioned as far as male friendships were concerned. There's a couple things that really struck me. One, he said that when it comes to men, we've been socialized in unhealthy ways when it comes to interacting with one another. And the way he explained it was that as men, we tend to get together and make sure we're doing things rather than interacting with one another and actually engaging each other's hearts and talking about like what's really going on with you? Like, how's your marriage? Like those kinds of conversations. We tend to place all the activities that we're doing, they take such priority that we never actually get a chance to deal with each other on a heart level. And I was thinking about my wife and just how women oftentimes are different in this regard. So my wife would tell me about how she would go out and hang out with one of her friends, and she'd leave out and come back a couple hours later. And I'm like, "Oh, how'd it go? How was your time?" And she was like, it was good. And I'm like, "So what y'all do?" And she was like, "We talked." I'm like looking at the clock. I'm like, hold on, you've been going for like 3 hours. Like what did y'all actually do? You know what I mean? She's like, nah, we just talk. Hold up, y'all just talk. Y'all just sat there and just talk. Like y'all ain't do nothing else. That's it. Like, it's very rare that I connect with a dude and we just do nothing but talk, right? And so that was interesting, like, because he talked about how Most Def was talking about how we actually use those activities to keep us from actually engaging with one another. But another thing that he said was that oftentimes with men in particular, our friendships tend to be transactional more than anything. So, and from his standpoint, he was talking about the music industry and how it's basically about, what can you do for me? What can I do for you? And let's make that exchange, and that will basically be the basis of our friendship or the extent of our friendship. And you can see the problem with that, right? When friendships are transactional, then whatever is the transaction that's bringing you together, if that gets removed, then the friendship is gone. And that's not just something that we see just out in the world. We see that in the church. We see that within Christian circles where the transaction becomes ministry involvement. And, you know, as those Christo urbanites from the Christian hip hop era, one of the things that always struck me was how it was like, man, like when the music was going well and we were doing these things musically together, it seemed like we actually had a dope friendship. Like we was like dudes, like we was connecting. But then it's like, you take the music away, or in some cases you take the popularity away, or you take the favor or the money away, and it's like the friendship is gone. And so years later, I'm standing on the other side of 40, like, yo, like all these dudes that I thought like at the time was like, yo, these is my dudes. Like we nowhere to be found, right? And so the transactional nature of male interaction. And so that's what we're going to chop up today. I'm going to bring in my co-host Ben and Deuce. How we doing? How we feeling?
Good, man.
Good.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, like as y'all think about this idea of male friendships, how would you describe what your experience has been in this regard, particularly like how it's changed from the time you were in your 20s, let's just say, up until now? Any thoughts about that?
Of course, different seasons of life, different availability, perhaps relocations changed certain things. Like you said, a sense of mission. You go from a ambition to see something happen missionally to just coasting within a season of life. Like you said, sometimes the kids have taken or diverted one's primary, activities in a certain direction. And so, yeah, I've seen a lot of changing in terms of who are the people in proximity with one another. But to your point, as you mentioned, how there was an era where what the gospel and what Jesus Christ did in bringing people together, and sometimes it looked like that's what it was, even though music was often in the same conversation.
Right.
We found out that it was more the music, the popularity, the giftedness, the transaction, more than the Jesus, we thought this is for him. And he brought us together because we have common affections, we have common desires, and we want to see something happen for his glory. And that's what's attracted us to each other. I've noticed that if I thought I had 100 friends, again, during that era, I thought I had 100 friends, people who made me think that. Right. I probably had 10 or 12. And I mean, that's the proportions of what I'm saying.
I mean, that's 10%.
Right. And again, it's been difficult to realize it.
Difficult, like painful. Painful realization.
Painful realization.
Yeah. And I feel that, like, because yeah, like you get to a certain point and it's like you start to look around,
right?
And you're like, wait, where they at? You know what I'm saying?
And I will say this too: what adds to the pain is when you're mourning it. So many people are so accustomed to being like certain people have not been pained by the realization. Maybe that's the way they are. So for them, what are you crying about? Or what are you? And it could even be people in my age bracket who are still moving on transactional, lanes, and they're looking almost like I don't get it. I can't relate to what you're missing, and that becomes more painful because it's very seldom that people can identify with the pain of realizing I had 100. I really only had 10, 12.
Right.
And had I known I only had 12, I would have found my delight in those 12.
Right, you can rock with that.
It's the fact that you made me think I had 100. And I've realized this late in life, I only had about 10 or 12. And most people, in that season, it was transactional. And the thing that it really was about left. And I'm not trying to be self-righteous, but for me, it was, and I think because I grew up with a father and a brother, and so that was like relationships. Again, I was in New York City. We didn't have extended family. So all my extended family was in Virginia. So it was just who I really had a relationship with all my life till I was a teenager. So if we were something, we're really that something.
Right.
And I guess I transitioned and that's not the case. But I'm vested deeply. I do all things 100, I'm either in or out, I'm on or off.
Right.
So that's the way it is, but relationships. And so that was painful.
And Ben, how about you? Like as you think about male friendships and what it's looked like from your 20s to now.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been a transition, a difference, both in who the friend group is, the people in it, but also, the nature of the friendships. But my intro or my connection with Christian hip hop during that period, like the early 2000s when we first met, and the circle of people that I met that formed, it was such a sweet time of like growing near to the Lord, growing in a sense of like the purpose of your life, the mission of the kingdom of God, the joy in serving Him. It left such a strong mark on me, that coupled with being mentored by an older man that felt like I've routinely in different places that I've been in really wanted to pursue that similar thing. So the group may be different here and there, like the peer group.
Right.
The strong impression that like you need friends, you need brothers you can share your heart with, who will confront you, who will rejoice with you, you will have a sense of a brothers in arms type of feel to life. That's been a strong, like, I need this, and it's ebbed and flowed in like the actual like pursuit of it, but the feeling of like, man, you absolutely need this group. And so I praise God that, like, we moved to Richmond about 12 years ago. So the peer group from Philly is a little bit different. Like you said, location can kind of change that thing. Yeah. But like, and we've been in a couple different churches, one largely because of assisting in planting. But I thank God that like there's a close 2 or 3 guys from the church that we were at prior to. Like I had lunch with one recently. Our kids are going to college. There's been some transition, but the impression of like, you need friends, you need people who actually know you closely that's been a strong mark. And I thank God that in different scenarios that's been present.
I'm glad you mentioned the local church, because that's an element to it where in the local church, you have this sense of shared mission. You're under the same teaching. You know what I'm saying? It's in one sense most natural to connect with people who are in your local church, and it's we're talking about being crystal urbanites. And we'll talk more on a later episode about the exodus of urbanites from particular crystal spaces, right? Yeah. But one of the challenges is if you're in a church, let's just say, where you're one of the few crystal urbanites, you all united around the crystal, but you lack the urbanite connection or the cultural connectivity. Where I remember, Ben, we had a conversation recently where you talked about like the challenge of not being able to bring your whole self into an interaction with people, and just how stifling that can be. On the flip side, where when you have all of those things together and you're able to kind of bring those worlds, it's just dope. You can be you. You don't have to explain nothing. We understand. We have that common ground. Common ground piece.
Excellent. Excellent. In Christ, that's what baptism, right? Where you are baptized into his death. You are, again, sharers of his life, and that inherently puts you into a relationship with others. Again, believers from all stripes, all types, but then locally you and providentially you meet people who you share a certain joy and comfort, or you get a certain joy and comfort. I'm thinking about 2 Timothy chapter 1, the house of Onesiphorus. I used to joke with you. That was one of our jokes, right? Like, because there was a season when it was refreshing. It could be Dunkin' Donuts, coffee, pool, fish and chips, and Jesus. Again, at the core, through some difficult times, right? He said he was not ashamed of my chains, and he found me. He searched for me and found me. You see what I'm saying? And it's that. It's you weren't ashamed of my low seasons, and we shared those things, and so I was comforted. Paul said the same thing, to Philemon. He said the churches talk about how they receive joy and comfort from you. Refresh my heart. We need men and women for whom Jesus is the basis of the relationship, since he doesn't come and go, doesn't waver, doesn't bend, doesn't fade. And his mission is standing, and his DNA is what it is. It doesn't go with the times. And it brings us into proximity. And these are what the scriptures would say, the ability for us to give our lives and be eternal friends. He said in Philemon, he said, perhaps this is why he left you, so you can have him back, no longer as a slave, but as a brother, forever, right? Forever. Eternal investment. Again, we have what the world can have, exponentially greater and more, because the world's hope ends at the grave, right? 70, 80, right? But we get to go into eternity with these things that we have. We just begin now. This is the practice for an eternal reality.
And I think one thing that I would say to younger dudes, so if you're listening to this and you're in your teens, your 20s, your 30s, I want to encourage you, cultivate friendships with dudes that and that know you, and cherish those things. Lean into those relationships. Don't take them for granted.
Exactly.
Because when you get to your 40s and you look around and it's like, dag, it's only 10% of who I thought. It's just that is a painful realization. And finally, as we get ready to close, I want to zero in on the male friendship aspect of it, in the sense that when most deaf, there's something interesting that happened in that conversation, which is there was a moment where Most Def did two things. He gave Talib a gentle rebuke about his social media usage, but then in the very next breath he affirmed him, and he said something to the effect of, you know what, you're a dope MC, but like, even if you weren't a dope MC, like, I love you.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, and I love you because of who you are and in spite of who you are.
Right.
Right. So, and that just hit me like, yo, like, that's what dudes in particular need from other dudes.
Yes.
Excellent.
Gentle rebuke, affirmation.
Absolutely.
And in a fatherless culture, because really that's what we that's what we desire from our fathers.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's ultimately what we desire from God. From God, like God the Father, right? That's what he does that perfectly. Right? He in the cross, he both rebukes us, right? And he affirms us. You're loved, you're my child. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And there's something different about hearing that from another man.
Yeah.
I know that it's a very common thing, and I get why it's said that, like, you know, my wife is my best friend. Look at me, I love my wife. We have a great relationship. We are friends. But I think a lot of guys that are married will substitute and say, well, my wife is my best friend.
Yes.
Your wife may be your best female friend. She is your companion for life. You're one flesh with her. Absolutely. Amen. That's great.
Right.
You still need a male close relationship. And I would even say, if you have a healthy relationship with your father, you should also have another healthy relationship with a brother in the Lord who knows you. He knows your weaknesses. He knows your strengths. He knows what, you know, the things that you enjoy, like you laugh about and whatever. Right. But, you know, like, I thank God that there's a brother, like, I can't get away with going to church with a look on my face. And this cat wouldn't, like, everything all right?
Right.
You good?
Right.
Right. Let's talk about it later.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it.
They know you well enough.
Yeah. And vice versa. Yeah. Or even like the ability to, like, you know, you said gentle rebuke. You know, I've got a whole theory of like trash talking with one another. But being able to, like, I know you so well that I can jokingly say something that is a little mirror that's held up to you, and that we've developed a thick enough skin because we love and care for one another, that you can jokingly say something about it and help me see myself so that I can look at myself and be like, Ben, that's ridiculous. Right. Like, come, give me a break. This brother's trying to help you, and we can do this vice versa. And then when you hear the affirmation of another dude that you respect, and you know he's got your back, who can tell you both your flaws and your strengths, man, that sinks in. Like, this is a safe space for me to be who I am. That I won't veer too far to the left or to the right. But I also won't be, it's not like this, like, a friendship that's good for you, not like medicine is good for you. Like, it's not enjoyable, but it's healthy for me. But like a friendship that this is good for me, both in the, I know I'm loved and affirmed, but I'm like, somebody's going to tell me the truth too. Yeah. Oh man, that's it's wonderful to have a friendship like that.
Yeah. Need that.
Cats don't talk about this kind of stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like the idea of being loved and affirmed, you know what I'm saying, and gently rebuked. You know what I'm saying? What it does is, because Christ is the center of it, it removes the need for posturing.
Yes.
Right. Like you know how we do, especially like with dudes that we don't know. Like, we come across like some, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's this almost like you got to kind of be something to let them know, like, you know what I mean? Right. And a lot of it is nonverbal. It's not even, you know what I mean? But when you're dealing with like true, real, Christ-centered friendships, it's just like, you can remove all that from the table. You can be yourself. You know what I'm saying? In all the glorious ways that God has made us, and we can keep it moving and interact.
When
like
you all
that.
talk about that male friendship, the emphasis on the maleness of friendship, especially for men, in an era where, like you said, the fatherlessness issue, I wonder if it's going to be possible for resets. So some of us did have a father. And so when we get up to snuff, when we get up to speed on these things, we want to try to walk in concert and be part of helping the next generation to know. Again, you know, we in this culture where people are talking about a toxic masculinity versus, you know, and so just trying to model for it affection, right affection, you know, and strength and right strength and humility. And even, I remember when I started allowing my tears to show just to make a statement that it is not a lack of masculinity to let tears flow. And so I wonder if there's going to be a period of reset. I wonder, maybe that's what all the drama and confusion about it is, to open people up to receive instruction on what it can be, looking at Christ as our as our supreme model, you know, the one who modeled for them all the healthy ways to relate to other people, especially being marked by not only women in his camp, Luke chapter 8, the part of his support system, but also 12 men that he gave his life to, and even could look at the one who would betray him and said, I had you, even though you were a devil, I had you in my camp, and he loved them. Says he loved them to the end, you know, and then laid down his life and modeling. Even when you mess up, Peter, go tell my disciples and Peter, right? And then going after him and bring it. Can we get some of this? Come on, baby. Can we get some more?
So then in light of, like, you know, because you mentioned turmoil, and I know that we all have some friendships that were broken or affected by the last few years. I want to be like the father who's waiting for the not that it's a son, but like a friendship to say, hey, look, you know what? I was hurt.
Looking down the corridor, like,
absolutely.
Any moment, I'm down.
But I treasure the friendship that was, and the union of, like, you know, there's some brothers you said, like, okay, there's some split. I don't doubt, like, you're walking. I don't doubt your salvation or your walk with the Lord. Right. So I would treasure the reunion of a brother or brothers in the Lord. And let bygones be bygones. Like, you know, maybe, hopefully, you know, things like that won't happen again. But man, the joy of a restored relationship, man. And I think there's some people who know, either you ghosted somebody, whatever like that. You maybe there's a young dude right now who's bearing some guilt over, like you might, maybe you're not on the broke end, but you're like, I broke it. Right. Well, I pray that you could have the courage to move toward that friendship again, you know, and pray that that there's some forgiveness offered, because the joy and the beauty of the restored relationship, I hope, could help overcome the apprehension about moving towards somebody. And we want to be the type of dudes who would also offer that to somebody where there's a broken relationship. 100%. Jesus has forgiven me of grimy stuff. I want to imitate him. So, you know, if there's a broken relationship, let's restore it.
As I think about this, like, it just in a fresh way makes me thankful for you brothers, and specifically like the fact that we 20 years deep. You know what I'm saying? And we haven't always agreed. Right. You know what I'm saying? And yet 20 plus years later, here we are in fellowship. You know what I'm saying? And Lord willing, like 20 years from now, like when it's the fourth quarter, the 2-minute warning, you know what I'm saying? We'll still be, if we're still around, be able to encourage each other even at that point.
How sweet it is for brothers to dwell in unity.
Excellent.
You know? It's like oil dripping down Aaron's beard. You know?
That's a good place to close. It's been the Halftime Pod. Grace and peace.
Humble Beast.
Brilliance Labs.